Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. Police officers of Reddit. What criminal actually impressed you with their skills? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was not involved in this case, but it was something we learned about. Two employees of a soccer betting company colluded to rig odds and make big money. One would be in the office rigging the odds of the purchased ticket, and the other would be in person purchasing the ticket at the moment the odds were tweaked. They would always buy both sides to pay out 3-1, so that whatever the result, they would win an estimated one portion, which is in excess. This was possible because of an option to allow no draws, with the effect that the bettor will get back his capital. Therefore, if a draw arose, it would simply result in them getting their money back. To avoid detection, they made sure that their potential winnings were always below the statutory minimum, which required winners' identification to be recorded. They also made sure to go to different outlets when making the purchases. However, their grand scheme was eventually foiled not by their own mistake, but by a busybody before them in the queue. The said customer had some issues with buying his ticket and eventually wrote in to make a complaint. Upon investigating the tapes from the outlet where the complaint came from, the company realized that their employee was making a purchase in their own outlets, which was clearly prohibited. This then led to the company on a chain of inquiry, which eventually led to a hefty jail term and fine for both of the criminals involved. I'm not a police officer, but I know some guys who are. The best one I heard was a guy who would drill a tiny hole beside a window to open the latch. He would then enter at night and go straight to the front door and open it, so he could make a quick exit if needed. If he couldn't open a door, he would leave immediately. He stole stuff, then closed the window and locked the door behind him. Most people had no idea they had been robbed. He took wallets off bedside desks while people slept beside them, or sometimes they just took some cash and cards but left the wallet. When he got caught, he was making a plea deal, so it was in his interest to admit all crimes so he couldn't later be prosecuted again for them. He took police around dozens of houses, and each had a tiny drill hole, and every house owner thought they had lost wallets and credit cards, never knowing they had been burgled. Stupidest one. A kid broke into his school at night and stole 10 laptops. It was snowing that night. Police came when the alarm went off, and there was one set of footprints in the snow that led them from the school the whole way to the kid's front door. In the 8th grade, my football coach robbed a bank in a small town in Washington state. He had a great elaborate plan. He posted an ad on Craigslist for job offerings, telling people they had to wear very specific clothes at a very specific location at the exact same time an armored vehicle was supposed to arrive at a bank. So when the armored vehicle arrived, he was dressed in the same clothes as everyone else. He robbed the armored car, then proceeded to run down to a nearby river where he got into a tiny inflatable raft and floated down the river. The day after he robbed the bank, he threw a fat pizza party for a football team, and then he went to Vegas. He was honestly one of the nicest coaches I ever had. Everyone loved him. He was caught by a homeless man who recognized the car that he drove up to the bank in. He was just recently released from jail, I think. I'm pretty sure he made a huge turn in his life, was writing children's books in jails, and now travels the country as a public speaker. Honestly, he's kind of an amazing human, even though he has a troubled past. I had to call to the IT help desk from a department of the company I was working at, asking, when are the new computers going to arrive? This caused some consternation, as we didn't know what they were talking about, but it wasn't an order that had gone missing as much as the entire department's computers. Someone had, in broad daylight, rocked up in a transit van, done a masterful piece of blagging, and convinced everyone, security included, that this was part of IT's rolling hardware update program. So they loaded their old computers in the van, and he said he'd be back soon with the new ones. Guy I know was one of those arseholes who drives around fast, neon lights, etc. You know the type of... So anyway, he blasts past us as we're walking one day in a Garda car, an Irish police car, in pursuit. He pulls down into a long and winding lane. He lives down the end of this. About 20 minutes later, cops come back out. He comes out triumphantly later. It turns out he had enough of a head start that when he got to his house, he pulled off his steering wheel, it was a quick release one, and just ran into his house. The police pulled up a second later, and he explained that it couldn't have been his car, it had no steering wheel. Got away with it. Not properly illegal law-wise, but against school rules. In our second year of high school, we're learning how to code in BASIC. There was an optional assignment for extra credits to make a drawing in VBA using only code. 3 girls in my classroom, your average pink Barbie, had no idea how to code and weren't doing very well in class either. So needing those extra credits, they came to me with a juicy offer of about $15 each to do it for them. My teacher's error was to tell us in advance not to try this shit, since he could tell who did the job for someone else by looking at the coding style, which made sense. So I tried my best to generate all 4 jobs with different spacing, resources, rems versus apostrophes, and such. I don't remember if I deleted the author from the file's properties. I must have done it though. I give each girl her floppy, oh the nostalgia, and tell them they're done. But they should mess with the code a bit themselves to further DLI styles, which I'm positive they never did. Fast forward 1 year later, my younger brother, same teacher, same class, is telling me how the teacher told them about this optional assignment he used to give but canceled after 3 girls got their assignment made by someone he could never catch. When I was a rookie, I got a call at 3 a.m. one night about a hold-up alarm going off at an ATM. I respond and don't really take the call that seriously at first because I'm thinking, there's no way a hold-up alarm is being triggered at 3 in the morning. I get there and start checking the bank when I see a guy walking through the drive-thru. Stupid me strolls over and calmly says, "Hey man, come over here and talk to me for a minute." He bolts. I take off after him, only to realize I left my handheld in my car. I run back and call it in, and my partner shows up shortly after. Well, we can't find the guy, so we start looking around. The guy spray painted the ATM camera, and he drove through the camera, which set off the alarm. About an hour later, I see a vehicle with out-of-state tags driving slowly through the drive-thru, and after running the plate, he has fictitious tags. We search the vehicle and could find absolutely nothing but a very long tree branch in the back of the SUV. We write him for fictitious tags and send him on his way per my sergeant. The next day, my investigator got a call from the FBI because they had this guy's name flagged and saw where we ran him. He had been hit at ATMs in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Tennessee. We were the first department to actually come in contact with him. He would spray paint the cameras or use the tree branch to turn the high cameras away. After the alarms went off, he would wait nearby for the police to leave. He would then come back, see the hinges off the ATMs, take the money. He stole approximately $150,000 over a 6-month period. He was caught a few weeks later by a guy I went to the academy with. I mean, this sounds complicated and also really smart, so, yeah. I mean, your money's federally insured, and the guy broke the law and got caught, but pretty smart. Not law enforcement. I was a photo tech who took passport photos for people. I would take them, print them, cut them out, and deliver. One day after doing a couple, I left a kiosk to go to the front of the store to man the till. When I was called back to do another passport photo, I searched everywhere but couldn't find it, the camera. So I told the customer and she laughed. What really made me laugh, however, was finding out how he stole it. After reviewing the security footage, it showed him walking up behind the desk, shoving it down his pants and walking out. Not bad. Until I came into work the next day. My coworker called to me, Allies, want to see this? What I saw was the same guy walking up behind the counter, shoving the whole effing printer the size of an Xbox down his pants, walking out of the store. My coworker would not tell me how much money we lost. The passport gear is locked in a cabinet now. My partner and I responded to a burglary call at a house late one night. When we got there, we heard the back fence rattle and knew someone had jumped the fence to flee. We set up a perimeter and ended up catching the burglar with the stolen goods. As I put him in the back seat of the squad car, he began throwing up. He drank a bottle of whiskey while stealing things from the house, and after running from us, the liquor didn't sit well. I rolled the window down so he could puke on the outside of the car instead of the inside. We drove back to the house to complete the report, and he told me there was another person with him inside the house, and he knew where the suspect was. He motioned to a house 2 blocks away that had a garage door partially open. He said his friend went inside and was hiding in there. I told my rookie partner to stay by the squad car while I and a few others checked the house. I made it to the garage and realized nobody was in there. I immediately heard tires squealing and the car speeding off. I ran back to the house, knowing what happened before I got there. The burglar in my back seat was now the car thief in the front seat, driving my squad car away from the scene. Naturally, everyone there jumped in their squad cars, and the search was on for the stolen squad car. We found the squad car about 20 minutes later, abandoned behind a house where a civilian was reporting their car stolen. The civilian left their car running to warm up, and the suspect stole that car to get away. About an hour later, the suspect was seen joyriding around where the burglary happened, and the chase was on. There were approximately 20 different units chasing this suspect throughout the city until the suspect finally crashed and was taken into custody. He's now serving 19 years in federal prison due to the fact that he was a convicted felon, and when he stole the squad car, he also removed several guns I had inside the car and was charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm. I was mad and embarrassed at the time, but I have to give credit to him for outwitting us. He later told us he was double-jointed and knew he could slip the handcuffs off and get them around to the front of his body. He said he made up the story of the second suspect in order to get us away from the car so he could use it to get away. My buddies and I were going to get McDonald's a couple months ago, and me, being a little dickhead, decided it would be fun to speed pretty hard on a road that no one really drives on. Well, just my effing luck, a cop turns onto the road. He sees me blazing by, turns on his lights, and starts to follow. Me, still being a little dickhead, decided to see if I could lose him. I know the road pretty well because it circles the town and goes to my house. I speed up, and my buddies start freaking the F out, me included. I round up to a turn where the road keeps going, and just as the officer lost sight of me, I turned off the road to the side road and then pulled into a really densely forested dude's lawn, which I drive past to get to school every day, kill my car, and tell all my friends to shut the f*** up. We see past the trees, the effing lost it and started screaming and laughing. This is probably the most bad illegal thing I've ever done, and even though it's not really that impressive, it still makes me feel cool every time I think about it. I'm not a cop, but I used to do store security for Tower Records. One day we were watching a guy on the camera acting suspiciously. He would pick up a handful of CDs, look up into the camera, smile, spin around, and poof, the CDs were gone. We couldn't figure out what the hell he was doing with them. He wasn't wearing a coat or anything he could quickly conceal them in, just a t-shirt and baggy jeans. We watched him do it several times, smirking the whole time. We were wondering if maybe he was baiting us, trying to get us to stop him so that he could sue the company. But CDs were definitely vanishing. Anyway, we stopped him at the front doors and shook him down a bit. He just smiled and claimed he didn't know what we were talking about. He even lets us pat him down, no CDs. So we let him go. Then we went back and watched the video several more times. Then we spotted it. Down around his calf area, there are vaguely square outlines. When I patted him down, I saw that he was wearing 2 pairs of pants. He'd been dropping them down his pants and letting them slide down his legs. The pants were baggy enough that dropping them on the inside made the CDs almost invisible in the pant leg. I have to tip my hat to this guy. He was like a magician. Dad's an ex-cop. I asked him and he told me the story of when a man robbed an adhesives manufacturer for some chemicals used in adhesive drugs. Guy locked himself in a room of highly toxic chemicals and threatened to chuck them in the airways so everyone would inhale them if he wasn't given a getaway. My dad was tasked with escorting a worker while ensuring all of the vents so the robber could do that. When the police and hazmat arrive, they bust the door down to find the man wasn't there. The walls were thin enough to kick down. The guy had melted one of the walls and escaped out the back with all he wanted. He used a thick cloth to stop the acid fumes. The hole, only about 1.5 feet in diameter. It turns out the guy was caught only 50 meters away because he burned his legs and hands with acid while using it and trying to get through the hole. True. Maybe when he gets out of jail. TLDR. The robber melts holes through thin walls with acid, burns himself, and gets caught. A friend of mine owned a bar in a very large city, and they had a very busy Thursday night, mostly due to 3 young bartenders who brought in a raucous crowd. Somehow, the end of the night till never added up to how busy the bar was, which they knew due to headcount and inventory. It got so bad they even hired a private investigator to watch them and find the skim. When the PI gave his report, he said he could not find anything wrong with what they were doing in terms of buybacks or stealing from the registers. He did mention they seemed to hit the middle register more often than the other 2 registers on the outside. That was the aha moment for my buddy, as the bar only had 2 registers. It turns out they were bringing their own register in a hockey bag and walking out with it at the end of the night, instead of turning them into the police because they were so young, and we all did knucklehead things at that age, plus they really crushed it on Thursday. They confronted them about it and let them work it off. My buddy eventually opened another bar, partnering with 2 of them, and it was very successful. My Uncle Marty's driving home, right? Bombed out of his tree, right? He just hammered out of his gourd, just cracked, and this state trooper sees him and pulls him over. So my uncle's effed, basically. I got him out of the car, try to make him walk the line. He gets out of the car and, pukes on the guy. Stady's pretty sure he's over the legal limit, so he's about to throw the cuffs on him and put him in jail, and all of a sudden, 50 yards down the road, there's this huge boom, right? So Stady gets really spooked, and he turns around. He tells my uncle, "Stay here, don't move." So the statue goes running down the road to deal with the other accident. After a few minutes of just lying in his own piss and vomiting, my uncle starts wondering what he's doing there. Gets up, gets in his car, and just drives home. Well, the next morning, my uncle's just passed out, and he hears this knocking at the door. So he goes downstairs and effing pulls the door open. What? It's the state trooper who pulled him over. Stady's like, "What the do you mean, what? You know what? I pulled you over last night." Is what? And you took off. He's like, "Bitch, I've never seen you before in my life. I've been home all night with my kids. I don't know who you are." He's like, "You know who I am. Let's go in your garage." And my uncle's like, "What?" He's like, "You heard me. Let's get in your garage." He's like, "All right, fine." He takes him out to the garage and opens the door, and there's the Stades police cruiser, which is in my uncle's garage. He was so effing hammered that he drove the wrong car home, and the best part about it is that the state trooper had been so embarrassed that he didn't do anything, because he'd been driving around all night in my uncle's Chevelle looking for the house.